Uh, hey guys. So I know it's been a while since I've last uploaded. I think it's been like maybe 3 or so weeks since I last uploaded. So, to make it up to you guys, I will be uploading 2 videos this week. So, today you're going to be getting this video in which I talk about both Black Widow and Loki Disney Plus series. And then tomorrow you will see me do a review on the Suicide Squad. So make sure you look forward to that because I got a lot of really cool things to say about the Suicide Squad. But anyway, so before we move on to that, we're first going to talk about the Marvel side of things with Black Widow and the Loki series. Oh, I should also preface this by saying the fact that I know I said that I would do reviews of Fear Street Part 2 and Part 3 once, all that, once it concluded and whatnot. Really didn't want to make videos on them because, just didn't really have it in me. So, TLDR, thought it was pretty good. I think probably the second one was probably my favorite out of the whole trilogy. But, yeah, thought it was really great. Anyways. So, moving on ahead, first we're going to be talking about Black Widow. Now, Black Widow was supposed to be the first film to release as a part of Phase 4. It was initially meant to release in May of last year, and it was meant to help kickstart the Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But seeing as how the events of the world at large ended up happening, that did not occur and got delayed by over 2 years and finally released on July 9th, 2021. And because of its release strategy, now Scarlett Johansson is attempting to sue Disney, but we're not going to talk about that right now. So, yeah, what is the premise of Black Widow? Well, the film is set in between the events of both Captain America Civil War and Avengers Infinity War, and explains what exactly Natasha was up to during that time period, as she ends up encountering her sister Yelena, played by Florence Pugh, and is forced to once again have to confront her past, and being able to confront, the Red Room, and also having to fight off the deadly assassin Taskmaster. So, first of all, the performances from everybody involved were really solid. Of course, Scarlett Johansson, does a great job with the character. She's been playing this character for over a decade now at this point, so... Of course, she really does a good job, with the character of Natasha Romanoff. Florence Pugh, obviously, is probably the standout as Yelena. She was really great, and the chemistry that she has with Natasha is really great and organic. And I really like the scene at the convenience store in which Yelena is talking about how when Natasha always poses and whatnot, everyone's looking at her and whatnot. I really thought that scene was really funny. But Red Guardian was probably my favorite character. I love David Harbour. I love him in Stranger Things. I actually found out not too long ago that apparently he was in Suicide Squad 2016, which I had no idea that he was even in that, but... Yeah, seeing him show up in this as the Red Guardian, and he had some of the funniest lines as well. He was probably my favorite character, because he was because obviously he just seems like this beaten down guy. He was supposed to be the Russian Captain America, but then eventually he just, his life didn't really go all that great, and now he's stuck rotting in jail. But yeah, David Harbour definitely did a really good job bringing that character to life. Also really liked Rachel Weisz's character as well. I'm forgetting what exactly her character's name is too, so. But yeah, I thought the performances from everybody around were really solid. The action sequences were really fantastic. The prison breakout scene was probably the highlight for me. And also, I really dug the scene in which, Natasha's, falling down through the sky and she's fighting Taskmaster as well. I thought that was really cool as well. But the biggest problem that I really had with Black Widow was it felt because the MCU is considered by many people to basically be one giant TV series, basically, except they're in the form of movies instead of actual TV episodes. To me, Black Widow kind of felt like the filler episode of the MCU, because now not necessarily saying the fact that filler is all that bad, because sometimes with filler you could be able to get a little bit more with character growth and depth and other things like that. But to me, Black Widow really didn't have much of a greater purpose other than the fact that oh, Black Widow's finally getting her own solo movie. Let's set up Yelena to become the next Black Widow now that Natasha's been dead ever since the events of Endgame. We'll also set up, like, these couple of other plot points here and there, and that's really about it. Like, there was really no greater purpose to this movie other than, you know, hey, let's finally give Black Widow the movie that people have been demanding for a decade now at this point. Not only that, but I thought the villain was kind of weak. Not just the head of the Red Room himself, but also, for Taskmaster as well. Now, the Taskmaster... Now, in the context of the story that the movie is trying to tell, I thought Taskmaster worked out really well. However, that is not Taskmaster at all. And the fact that Avengers 2020 somehow did a better job of representing Taskmaster than the Black Widow movie, it definitely says something. But yeah, I still dug Black Widow. It's just, I think within the grand scheme of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's really not that important. But it's still not bad. I still say give it a watch. So that's why I'm gonna give Black Widow at least 7.5 out of 10. Like, it's pretty good. But now we have Loki. Like, aside from WandaVision, Loki was the Disney Plus series that I was really looking forward to the most. Here's the reason why. Now, the reason why I was looking forward to Loki the most is because, very much like WandaVision, Loki's supposed to be this big show that's going to have major ramifications on the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole. In fact, Kevin Feige said that out of all the Marvel Disney Plus shows that have released so far, Loki's the one that's going to be the most impactful. And after seeing what ended up happening, and now the series is finally concluded, yeah, I would definitely agree with him on that. But what is the premise of the Loki TV series? Well, the show picks up following the events of Avengers Endgame, specifically that version of Loki that we saw make off with the Tesseract during Endgame. Here we follow his journey following him after he got the Tesseract and as he ends up getting captured by an organization called the TVA. Now, the Time Variance Authority, or the TVA, their one duty is to ensure the fact that those that could potentially cause branching timelines to form are properly dealt and handled with. So, like, say, for example, like, okay, so pretend that my hand here is supposed to be the timeline, and Loki picking up the Tesseract ended up happening here. The timeline still happens here, but it then causes another branching timeline to form. The TVA's purpose is to be able to put that branch straight and to eliminate it before it gets too big and before it can cause serious damage. Because the reason why the TVA was founded was because of a multiversal war that ended up occurring from alternate timelines basically duking it out for, you know, their survival. Oh, sorry about that. I just had something on my lens that I just had to quickly get off. But yeah, and Loki is brought into the TVA, and initially it seems like he's going to, you know, die. But then an officer of the TVA, Mobius M. Mobius, played by the great Owen Wilson himself, basically tasks Loki with helping him on the latest assignment, hunting down another variant of Loki. And what started out as something as simple as that quickly begins to spiral into something bigger than Loki could ever possibly imagine. Now, here are a couple things that I really love about the show. One, the visual style is absolutely fantastic. I really like the architecture that they have for the TVA and how it makes it almost seem like a metropolis kind of architecture, and the statue of the timekeepers all stacked up against one another. Like there's some supreme beings and other things like that. Like I thought that was really cool. Not only that, but I also really liked the various locations that they all ended up visiting as well, which was also really cool. Not only that, but the performances from everybody were absolutely fantastic. Tom Hiddleston, very much like Scarlett Johansson, nails the role of Loki. He's been playing that role for over a decade now. And this probably, I honestly think the fact this probably might be Tom Hiddleston's best performance as Loki because this is Loki's solo Disney Plus series, we get to see so much more to his character, and we see that because this is still the version of Loki following the events of Avengers 1, so this was shortly after he basically lost, we get to see the sort of new kind of Loki begin to form, because this is a Loki that hasn't experienced through all the other things that the Loki of the main Marvel timeline had experienced yet. So it's really interesting to see the journey that he ends up going on in order to be able to find his own sense of belonging and place in the universe. Not only that, but I really like the chemistry that he shared with Owen Wilson's Mobius and Mobius, and I very much liked how it had a very Lethal Weapon, 48 Hours kind of buddy cop dynamic to them, which is really cool. Also really enjoyed the actress who played Sylvie. I think it's Sophia Martino, I think is her name. But I thought she was really great as Sylvie, she's technically a Loki variant, but she's also sort of an amalgamation of both Lady Loki and the Enchantress. But yeah, I thought she was really great, and I really liked how, they really took this character. One thing I really love about, these Disney Plus series is, I also really love about Marvel in general, is how they're able to take these characters that have never either been introduced in the greater MCU or even exist in the comics, and they're able to have them work so well and so organically for the story they're trying to tell here, and Sylvie works really well. And I also really liked the episode in which Loki, the Journey into Mystery episode, which was a callback to, because before Marvel, was the Marvel that we knew them, they were originally known as Timely Comics, and one of the books that they published was Journey into Mystery. In fact, I believe it was actually in Journey into Mystery that we actually got a lot of, some characters, I believe Groot actually made his first appearance in Journey into Mystery. But then again, I could be wrong on that. But yeah, I really liked that callback. And I also really liked all the different Loki variants that ended up popping up, like Boastful Loki, Kid Loki, Classic Loki, played by Richard E. Grant. And then, of course, there's the spoilers for the season finale. I really liked how Jonathan Majors just shows up, and even though he's called He Who Remains, it's basically Kang the Conqueror. This is just set up for Kang. Because I remember, when it was officially announced that Jonathan Majors had been cast as Kang for Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, I'm like, well, what if he ends up showing up in another Marvel project first? What if he shows up in, Loki? Because that deals with the idea of multiple timelines and other realities, which is definitely more, when it comes to, I'm always a huge sucker for the idea and concepts of alternate timelines and alternate realities. That's another reason why I'm looking forward to What If so much, because I really find it fascinating about how the people behind the Marvel Cinematic Universe are taking the traditional movies that you know from the MCU and changing just one tiny thing about them, and then suddenly the landscape just drastically changes, and it's not at all what you expect. And Loki definitely seems to be setting that up really well, because He Who Remains basically explains to Loki and Sylvie, look, there was this big war that ended up erupting out because there were a lot of alternate versions of me that ended up, we ended up variants of myself. Eventually, we ended up going to an all-out war that almost ended every single reality that there was. And now you're presented with a choice. You can either A, take my place and ensure the fact that the sacred timeline is, smooth sailing ahead, or B, you could kill me, and you could just cause all these timelines to just branch and just go out of control and whatnot. Now, Sylvie, obviously still bitter at the TVA over basically taking away her livelihood just because she existed, obviously she's going to take the killing option. But Loki, being the more reasonable one, is like, no, we can't do this. And also another thing I want to mention really quick, I really did like the dynamic that both Loki and Sylvie had. Very much like Mobius and Loki, the banter that they shared between each other was really great. It is a little bit questionable as to whether or not this could technically be considered incest, because technically this is another version of Loki, so I guess technically he's in love with himself. It's weird. That's probably the one major issue that I probably have with that is, that little thing there. But anyways, and so after Loki and Sylvie share a moment, Sylvie opens up a portal, pushes Loki through it, and ends up killing He Who Remains, and thus ends up setting up an entire multiversal war. Loki, now realizing the fact, oh no, this is really bad, he tries to go to Mobius and one of the hunters, I think it's Hunter B-15, to warn them of Kang and his variants' arrivals. But the thing is, they don't recognize Loki, and then he looks over to his left, and he sees what was supposed to be a statue of the 3 Timekeepers is now replaced by a statue of Kang the Conqueror. And that's where the season ends. And then, but not before we get a little message towards the end saying Loki will return for season 2. But this just makes me wonder, because Loki, because this is going to help lead into Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, I mean, with everything that's been going on, from WandaVision to this to What If Tom Hiddleston ended up showing up at some point in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness as his version of Loki from the show, I wouldn't be surprised. Even if they don't really tell anybody that he's in the movie, it would make a lot of sense for him to at least pop up in there. But yeah, I'm really digging what exactly Marvel's doing with this whole multiversal saga that they're beginning to build. Like, I'm always a huge sucker. That's another reason why I'm looking forward to that new Flash movie with Ezra Miller, is how they're going to introduce the idea of the DC cinematic multiverse, and how it's going to be so cool being able to see Ezra Miller's version of the Flash interact with Michael Keaton's Batman, which we haven't seen Michael Keaton appear as Batman since Batman Returns back in 1992. So finally seeing him reprise the role of Batman for another movie is honestly really cool. And that's another really great thing about, multiversal opportunities like this. You get to be able to bring back actors in roles that they previously did in other films or TV shows, and you can basically chalk it up and state, oh, it's the multiverse. Like, it's just a different version of the character. But yeah, I definitely really dug Loki. Like, I think this is probably the best out of any of the Disney Plus series that Marvel has produced so far. Like, I think it is absolutely fantastic, and I'm really excited to see where exactly everything is going, because the seeds have been planted, and I'm really excited to see where they blossom and grow. So I'm going to give Loki a 9 out of 10. It's a really fantastic series. That about really wraps it up, on my end here for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and make sure to tune in tomorrow for when I upload my review of the Suicide Squad, as previously mentioned. Oh, by the way, yes, this was basically a big inspiration for James Gunn when he did make the Suicide Squad, and I do recommend that you do read this if you really dug the Suicide Squad, but we'll get to that when we get to that. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys leave a like. Make sure to subscribe and ring that notification button. Make sure the fact that you don't miss out on any future uploads. And yeah, as always, stay gold.